Please join me once again. Ravi, that was fantastic. So many nuggets. A very warm round of applause. So we've got some time now for Q&A because I know that there will be some burning questions in the audience. I've got a microphone that will come around. We'd love you to use the microphone and that way we can pick you up on the audio.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I was going to save those for you. Very grateful. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You've just massively inspired me today, exactly what I needed to hear. Do you agree? Is everybody in the audience, that's exactly what we needed to hear today and yesterday and the day before. What was the last thing you got curious about? Yesterday, today, last week?
Well, look, I thought this, I was coming here and, I was curious enough to spend time with my team going through my life to see what could be of relevance to a group of people I hadn't met. But we're all brought here for a common purpose. I'd had conversations with Ankush, with Jeremy, with Dean, with a few other people, but really, you don't know quite what to expect. And I think that's where you go back to what I said, which is you're a bunch of human beings. I think we are all looking for connection. We are looking for purpose. There are some fundamentals. I think you're also looking for camaraderie and, collaboration and help. And I think, once I started, sometimes we overthink things, and I think, for me, I sort of took a breath on my, on trying to make it too intellectual or too academic or too whatever, and just to talk about what might resonate, and hopefully it did.
It certainly did. So we've got some questions in the audience. If you'd like to raise your hand, Ankush has a microphone. We'd love to hear from you. The opportunity to ask a question of this amazing person.
This is a very serious question. Do you play golf and what's your handicap?
I do not play golf. It is on my agenda. Actually, my agenda right now is to try and get back to play tennis. I've had a few injuries, a couple of hip surgeries, shoulder. My goal was to play ITF over 55s. I'm now 58, so I haven't got there yet. But I'm going to maybe play the 60s. I'm lucky enough to have a hit with Pat once a month, and I'm trying to get back on the court. But golf is definitely something I want to play. But I played for a very short period of time when I was at IMG, but right now with my travel, I did 400 flights in 4 years. So I spent a lot of time on the road. But I'm definitely keen to play.
And you said do it now.
Look, okay, well.
We have a great tennis
all right.
court
I'll be here at 6 a.m. tomorrow.
We'll arrange the crowd to come and watch you if you can arrange the other 3 players. That'd be great. Who else has got a question for Ravi? Just up the back. Please say your name too, please.
Hi, Ravi. My name's Veronica. Thank you. A great event. I've got an interesting question, and it's only for me, really. It may be interesting to anyone else, but at the end of your life, if anyone who has a headstone, you have 186 characters. There's your name, and you have your date of birth, your date of passing. And there's just enough room for maybe 5 or 6 words. For someone who's had such an incredibly colourful life with lots of experiences, what does it say?
I think good friend, father, boss, partner. It comes down to relationships for me. It doesn't come down to much more than that. I think that's it. Brother, son, all those things. There's 6.
And maybe head, heart, and hands. Good question. Thank you. Some more questions? There we go.
Good evening, Ravi. Thanks for that talk. My name's Mark. I wanted to ask you how you see the runaway AI boom affecting what you say is a basic principle of business, that is relationships between people.
I think it's so early, but it is extraordinary. I'm kind of fascinated. On an academic level, I'm fascinated. On a commercial and a human level, I'm scared. I think it's probably, we've seen no time like this in the history of mankind. But look, I think, I'll step back and maybe just a bit of a stream of consciousness. You think about this, we've been around for maybe 100,000 or 200,000 years, and for most of that, our lifespan was, I think, 30. And then for a long period, up until the 1800s, it was about 35. Now, all of a sudden, it's 82 or something like that, right, in the 200 years. Most of the progress that's been made in humanity has been over the last 50 years, and it's been made at an extraordinary pace. I was talking to Steve Schwartzman, who's the CEO of Blackstone last year, and he said, because he's obviously, they're right behind AI, and AI, if AI's IQ today is 200 or 240 or whatever it is, the potential is 12,000 IQ. And it could get there in 5 years. The only thing holding us back right now is energy. It'll take 20 because of energy, water, all those things. Otherwise, so I'm genuinely, if I have to be honest, concerned about what it does to human relations. I mean, let me give you another stat. India creates 15 million graduates every year. 15 million, but only 800,000 white-collar jobs. If we are creating an educated cohorts who are paying for that, and then they can't even get a job, we're sort of heading towards, I think, maybe Brave New World, if anyone's read that. But then I speak to people who say, look, Ravi, throughout all the changes from, industrial revolution to, internet to whatever, we found a way. Honestly, I think that's probably a bit too optimistic, but I really don't know, but I think it's here to stay. I do believe just because we can doesn't mean we should sometimes. I don't think anyone's quite stopped necessarily to think, okay, is everything going to lead to a positive outcome? So I'm curious. Look, I've got to say, it's affected my business very positively for me. I mean, I am fascinated by the dialogue that I have with Claude on some of my own ideas, where I don't need to talk to an agency, where it gives me back stuff in a minute, which would take an agency 3 weeks, and someone wouldn't have listened to me or taken the note down wrong, so I have to go back again, and they keep. So, from an efficiency point of view, it's extraordinary. I think one of the things I would say, and I've said this, is you need extraordinary language skills to really get the most out of it. And this is where it's almost paradoxical, right? When you look at some of the kids today, I mean, they can hardly string a sentence together, some of them, because of the way they communicate, right? So those that in its own sort of circular way, it may push more emphasis on arts and literature and reading. I said, I have this conversation at my door. I think reading is so important. It's exercise for the brain, it's vocab. And I think they're the things that if people want to get the most out of AI, or certainly that's one way, they need to have superior language skills. So that's not really an answer, but I just don't think anyone knows if the truth is. But I think to ignore it at your peril, But I think, in a world that's going to 10, 11 billion people, we got to find a way to allow people to have a life. All these jobs in the middle are going. So, I feel worried about that.
I'm a salesperson, Ravi, have been all my life. And my great concern for the future of sales is that you can't have a relationship with a machine.
Yeah, so I think that's a good thing for you. I mean, if you're a salesperson, because ultimately, it depends. If you're selling, pork bellies, then that's a commodity. That'll be different, right? Anything you can trade on exchange, I think will just be a negotiation, not a sale. But I think there will always be a place, I think, for salespeople. Big deals, for a while to come, will be done through relationships. If you line up three people with the same deal, the person will always take the one they like. And building relationships is really, really important. So, for me, it's, and even if you look at all the big deals around the world in sport and whatever, ultimately, it requires those relationships. It's not just about what's on paper.
Thanks, Ravi.
And our community is all about relationships.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
much so. We've got time for one last question. Someone else got a burning question for Ravi? Just over here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ravi. Very inspiring. I've got a bit of a tense background, so love the insights. Probably a little bit similar, but what are you most proud of your esteemed career, both personally and professionally?
I think, look, I was very proud of if you talk about deals, I was very proud of the Sahara Cup deal because I just didn't know what I was doing. I just, but it was, it made me feel like I belonged. I just went in there and I did it. And I knew that I was I knew I was in the right place. I knew I was doing what I was born to do. And I think, I was glad, and that was very validating, I think personally, without a doubt, is my daughter, right? I mean, there's nothing more important than my relationship with her. But also, I think one of the things that I'm very happy about is to stay relevant. I'm building a new business now, same area, but I work with creative and commerce. I work between creative and commerce. I work with old people, young people. There's a great phrase by Stephen Jenkinson in this book, Come of Age, and he says, "Who should be the beneficiaries of your life? It can't just be the gated community of your peers," and I think for me that's really important. If I want to stay relevant at 58, then I have to be able to move beyond just that gated community of my peers. And, I see a lot of bankers hanging with bankers and artists hanging with artists, and I'm lucky enough to have a group of people, friends, that across all forms, and that keeps me energised. It gives me an opportunity to stay relevant at 58 and try and build something that is for the future, at a time where a lot of my friends who are infinitely more successful than me are a little bored, because they're doing the same thing. And so I think that for me is really, really important. And that comes from, I think, being curious and, trying to understand, different groups of people. And I think that's relevant in a non-linear world. We all grew up in a production line world, a linear world. And in order to stay relevant, we have to unlearn as much as we have to learn.
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you for all your questions. Well, you've used a lot of words tonight that have been incredibly inspiring. I've written down so many of them to take into my journey. I think one of the ones you haven't yet mentioned, and I think we will all firmly agree that you are a human that is leaving a legacy. And that's an honour to have you in the room and to hear from your stories, to learn from you. So would you please join me in a round of applause for Ravi? So thank you all for attending and joining us tonight. I'm sure you'll agree it's been an inspiring evening. The date for the next Sandhurst Business Collective event will be announced very soon, and it'll be communicated via email. We look forward to seeing you again. One of the things we'd like you to do before you leave today, please find someone you haven't met and have a conversation about the thing that resonated with you the most from Ravi's presentation tonight. Maybe write it down, maybe before you leave your table, or just that thing in your mind, and share it with somebody else, and then ask that person for their recollection, for their reflection as well. So that will be our challenge to you. Please do stay longer. Please enjoy the evening, network, and of course come and see Ravi as well. It's been my pleasure hosting you tonight. Thank you to the team for setting all of this up, for all the hard work. Good evening. You were amazing. So inspirational. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.